I'm going to do this just because of the talk that came before mine. But I'm Professor Marcela Sulak, and I direct the graduate program in creative writing here at Bar-Ilan University. I teach in the English department. It's the Department of English Literature and Linguistics. We have undergrad tracks in both of them. The first degree, which is a basic, wonderful general degree that covers everything from American literature and British literature, rhetoric. We have literary translation and creative writing. My own personal specialty is immigrant literature. I'm interested in people who are writing American literature and in languages other than English. I did not intend to move to Israel. I only moved here 15 years ago. I spent my entire life learning the wrong languages. So I'm also more fluent in English, obviously, than Hebrew. We also, in the graduate degree, in the MA track, the second degree, we have a possibility to have a degree in literature or in creative writing. In creative writing, we've got fiction, literary and nonfiction, poetry, and literary translation. Or I like to call it truth and lies. We have fiction and everything else, right? So I'm going to start off with this quote because we just heard a really nice lecture on mysticism and peyote and mescaline and all those things that I grew up with in Texas. That's why I'm a poet. No. Here's the quote, here's the poem, and this is in the English translation. It's Charles Baudelaire, and it's called Be Drunk. You have to always be drunk. That's all there is to it. It's the only way. So as not to feel the horrible burden of time that breaks your back and bends you to the earth. You have to be continually drunk. But on what? Wine, poetry, or virtue, as you wish. But be drunk. And if sometimes on the steps of a palace or the green grass of a ditch, in the mournful solitude of your room, you wake again, drunkenness already diminishing or gone, ask the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, the clock, everything that is flying, everything that is groaning, everything that is rolling, everything that is singing, everything that is groaning, everything that is speaking. Ask what time it is, and wind, wave, star, bird, clock will answer you. It's time to be drunk. So as not to be martyred slaves of time, be drunk. Be continually drunk on wine, on poetry, on virtue, as you wish. Now, you see, it's a nice movement from the last lecture to this one, because what does it mean to be drunk, to be intoxicated? What does it mean to be opened to not just the mystical experiences that you have in our lives, but also our daily routines? What does it mean to be deeply attentive to those around us? Not just how they look, how they feel. In literature, we study how they speak, right? We study the words that are used to create the realities that we live in. And words are very important. Words created the world. In Bereshit, words created the universe we live in. Words are the way in which we are most divine and are creating like the divine presence in the world and in all the worlds, right? And so I think that when you study literature, it's one of the most important and profound things that you can study. It sounds fun, and it is. It's really fun to sit and read books and talk about books to other people who like to read books. But it's also useful, and it's also necessary. I mean, on the practical matter, you can get a job anywhere. because we study in English, and in English you can use this skill that you know how to write, how to read, how to organize your thoughts, how to present them in an effective manner. Everybody needs this. Our students are working, I'm doing this, I'm interrupting this mystical, beautiful pitch to just do the commercial part because, by our sponsors. But I want to say, if you have to convince somebody to do this degree, here's the pitch that you use, right? Everybody wants to talk to somebody. Everybody needs somebody who knows how to organize an argument, how to win an argument. This is what rhetoric is for. How to decide what another person needs to be convinced and to use those tools. I mean, you use it for good, not for evil, of course. But and so you can work in this. You can teach, you can work in publishing, you can work in journalism, you can work in high tech. I haven't figured out how to do that, but people do. Some of our graduates do. Our graduates also have published books. We have one of the most published alumni, I think, in our department. In our university, we have about 14 collections of poetry by prestigious national presses in the States and in England from our poets, and a couple of fiction, a couple of novels as well, and many, many translations, including Marcela. So that's the commercial pitch. Let me move back up to the spirituality. And unless you are not really moved by money mysticism, and we want to talk a little bit more about importance and value and ethics. What I want to suggest with the degree in literature is that this is the way that you time travel. It's the way that you travel if you can't get a visa and get out of the country. It's the way that you connect to people across the globe and across time. And you connect to people who have not yet been born, who will come after us. For me, personally, it's very important. I grew up in a small town in Texas. I grew up in a town of 250 people, 5 miles outside. I never saw an elevator until I was in high school, right? And so for me, literature was a very personal and important and sacred thing. It was the way that I met minds that were like mine. Later on, I went to graduate school, and I went to a Jesuit school in the Midwest, and they were teaching science fiction in political science as a way to imagine other worlds in government classes, as a way to imagine things if we don't like how things are now, and who does, right? It's a way to imagine other possibilities. And so the study of literature for me not only is intoxicating, but it's also important and sacred and powerful, okay? I want to give a little history. My own specialty is poetry, and I know that when people hear poetry, they often get a little bit afraid, because I know that it's often taught as, here's the poem, now we have to decode it, right? Like it's a scavenger hunt or a treasure hunt, and when you get the answer, you pass your bagrut, yay, right? But what I want to talk about with poetry is that it's the way that literature is embodied. With fiction, we read, we get a summary, we see what's happening, and fiction's great. We can time travel, we can hang out, with the Austins, or we can even go further back. We can walk across Spain with Don Quixote. We can do whatever we want. But when we read poetry, we actually have to participate. We take it into our bodies. And poetry is meant, it has the musical score in it. It's meant to be spoken, it's meant to be performed, it's meant to be felt. It's so important that in Plato's Republic, remember, he kicks one person out of the Republic, it's the poets. Why are the poets kicked out of the Republic? He says they're liars, but really, the reason that poets are kicked out of the Republic is that they get people's heart rates going. They tell stories. Everybody tells stories, right? You travel from place to place, you tell stories, that's the news. But you get people's heart rates going so fast, and you get people all riled up that people are dangerous. And this is why the poets are kicked out. Not because they're liars. Everybody's a liar. everybody's also telling the truth. The reason why everybody's a liar and everybody tells truth is because we all have different perceptions of reality, which is why we have to make good arguments and we have to write down our facts, right? And so this is then one of the pieces of evidence that we have that poetry is important and dangerous because it can keep people kicked out of republics. The other thing that I want to suggest is that poetry is the first form of magic or communicating with the divinity. The word spell, like spelling, comes from the Celtic word, and it means to write down magical spells. Yeah, it's okay. The word grammar comes from the Celtic word glamour, and it's magic. And so the act of writing, the way that you put together words in a sentence and the grammar that you use to hold them together is one of the most powerful and basic, magical, creative ways. And by creative, we mean generative, not just you make the earth, not just like God, we make the earth like God, but we also make the reality that you live in. You create the systems and the structures of government that fill it. Now, like I said, my own personal research is mostly with immigrant literature, and I work with American literature, but you can move this to all over. I also teach a course called Passing, in which we can incorporate the idea of national belonging, racial belonging, gender. You can do that anywhere. I just use the American context because that's the one I'm familiar with. But in my courses, what I figure is this. America is a nation of immigrants, right? How do you make a national bond? What holds them together? What's the glue that holds you together? We don't have any fairy tales. We don't have any stories. Like most nations have a nice founding story. The Jews certainly do, and we're going to recreate this on Passover very soon. Even my family's from the Czech Republic, even the Czechs do. The Papa Czech went up to the hill Říp, looked over it and said, this is a land of milk and honey, right? There's no one living here except those savage Germanic tribes. We're gonna stay here and build our country. Everybody has a founding story. Troy does, Rome does, right? But America, you just got the Pilgrims. That's not a lot. And so basically, how do people write themselves into American literature? You write by using the narrative of the boundary, the border, the frontier, all that open space, and the encounter with the other, because you encountered the other in America all the time in early literature. So what I wanted to show you, just one example, because I think I'm confused about time. Are we finishing up? We past time? Never mind, I'm not gonna use any examples. I'll happily talk to you about my own research outside. I'm at the table. So any questions right now? Yes?
What is your primary argument for studying English literature in school?
At Bar-Ilan University? In the first degree or the second degree?
Second degree.
In the second degree. First of all, it is the only program in all of Israel that has a master's degree in creative writing. So it's the only degree granting creative writing program. So if you are interested in that, that's my argument, right? But you mean as opposed to anywhere else, or do you mean in general?
One's about studying English literature in a non-English speaking country, and one is specifically.
Okay, I will tell you this, and I will speak mostly from creative writing, and it's an excellent question. If you are doing this, I would also suggest that you take advantage of the Erasmus program and do an exchange semester abroad as well. Almost all of our faculty are trained in the United States or in England. And we come from Princeton, Harvard. I'm from the University of Texas. So we have this so that the faculty are just like anywhere else. But the students are really special. We have about maybe, depending on the year, 40 to 60% are domestic and the rest are international. And in English, it is a place in which people meet in a neutral language. So in creative writing, we have had all of the flavors of religion of this country all together in the classroom with, we get a lot of Dutch people, and they're fabulous, so with a lot of Dutch, Germans, South Americans, today Russian, Ukrainian, and we all come together and it creates a place like I have never seen before. And I've taught in several universities in the United States. I made Aliyah from Washington, D.C. Never have seen classrooms like this. And the kind of conversations that this energy has is incredibly provoking, thought-provoking. I will say one thing honestly, that people are a little bit less prepared than the second degree in America because, you know, you're studying your first degree usually in a non-native English-speaking place. But the learning curve is a lot quicker because people are used to learning things quickly, independently, and so people catch up. And I find that the graduates, the end product, is much stronger depending on what you wanted to do. It depends also, you know, on the field. In creative writing especially, it's much stronger when you finish than anybody I've had in the States. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for humoring the English language talk, and I'm downstairs if you want to speak more.